Okay, hello and welcome everyone. As a financial planner, I often get asked, what is it exactly that financial planners do, right? What is working with a financial planner really like, if you will? I like to compare the way that I work with individuals and families, like the way a personal trainer works at a gym. I view my role as really doing three different things. First and foremost, just like a personal trainer at a gym, I try to help people get very, very clear on exactly what it is they want to achieve. It's not enough to just say I want to get in shape, right? We talk about what your specific fitness goals are when you're working with a personal trainer, and I do very much the same thing when it comes to your finances. Second, I help you develop a plan to kind of get you from where you are today to where you want to be in the most efficient and effective way possible. But then the third part, I think, is actually the most important, and that is to hold you accountable to your best intentions, if you will, right? You've told me what it is you want your money to do for you and what you want to do with your money. It's my job to hold your feet to the fire, if you will, and to make sure that you're actually showing up for yourself and doing the things you say you want to do. In the same way that people have a lot of success working with personal trainers because it makes them show up to the gym at certain times, right? I view my role very much the same way, and it's in that last part, that spirit, that I want to take a step back and ask you right now, right? It's the first week in February when we're recording this. How are your New Year's resolutions going? How are you doing with them? And if your answer is great, then phenomenal. You can probably turn this off at this point. But right, for most people, by this point in time, New Year's resolutions are in the past, if you will. Fewer than a study came out last year that showed that fewer than 25% of people still stick to their New Year's resolutions once the calendar hits February, which is not great. And that, frankly, is for all types of New Year's resolutions. I have a lot of reason to believe that financial New Year's resolutions in particular don't tend to stick. And ultimately, right, why? Right? Why is that the case? Why is it that New Year's resolutions, particularly when it comes to your money, don't work? And there's a couple reasons for that. First and foremost, there's nothing particularly special about January 1st. For all intents and purposes, is an arbitrary date on the calendar, right? There's nothing special about it that once you kind of get past those first few days of the new year, nothing's changed unless you have the will and determination to make it change. And not only is it an arbitrary date on the calendar, it's a very hard one to actually start doing new things with, right? If you travel for the holidays, if you are just kind of celebrating New Year's and going to visit friends and things like that, right? It's hard to actually get started on January 1st. And I've seen a lot of people, have these goals they want to start at the beginning of the year, and then just due to circumstances, it's not a great time for them to try to make this change. And then all of a sudden, it doesn't happen, right? You've fallen off before you even get started just because of where it falls on the calendar. But ultimately, right, there's nothing inherently different between January 4th and December 4th, right? You're relying on your self-motivation to make the New Year's resolution work. And that just, quite frankly, doesn't work well for most of us. It's not how we're wired. It's also a really depressing time of the year for most people. It's if you live in the kind of northern part of the country, it's winter, weather's not great, holidays are over, you're kind of back to work with a long time before vacations for most of us, right? It's just not a great time mentally for a lot of people, which tends to make it more likely that you're going to engage in some sort of quote unquote guilty pleasure that tend to run counter to your New Year's resolution, right? You want to go shopping. You want to, if you're trying to get in shape, you might be more likely to eat the way you shouldn't be and things like that, right? It's not a great time of the year. And for finances, right? It's not even that January 1st is just an arbitrary time, right? To start to make these changes. Actually, I think a really bad time to start trying to make big changes to your life. Because if you're one of the vast majority of people in this country who celebrate at least one big holiday in November and December, and you're buying money on plane tickets to visit friends and family, and you're buying gifts for a lot of people, and holiday cards and all the expenses that come at this time of the year. Not only is January just a random time to start, it's actually a really bad one, because all of a sudden you're going to have to pay those bills on your credit card, right? If you use your credit card to do most of your spending, right? You're actually setting yourself up to make these changes at a time where you're more likely to get discouraged It's not an ideal time, right? I've seen people before say they're going to try to save more money starting January 1st, do pretty well with it for a week or two. The 15th of the month comes around, they log in to see their credit card bill. It's massive from the stuff from before they started to make these changes, and it demotivates them. It throws them off, right? At least with a weight loss goal, the scale starts to go down on January 2nd or January 3rd, right? When it comes to your money, oftentimes, especially after the holidays, you have a lot of stuff to clean up, if you will, before you can start improving moving forward. And just the way we're wired, the behavioral psychology behind all this makes it even worse. There's this principle in psychology called loss aversion, right? People tend to value or emphasize losses over gains. If you were to make $5, that has less of severe of an impact on your mood than losing $5. Losing $5 is much worse than a good thing. Than gaining $5 is a good thing. And I see this a lot in the investing world as well. When it's particularly over the past 6 months when the market's been crazy, I've seen a lot of people with state accounts that have gone down in value. And I've noticed that when the market's good and your accounts are going up in value, we tend to look at percentage increases. My account went up 10% or 15%. But when the account's down, I never actually hear that. What I hear is how many dollars it's been down, right? It feels more real, right? So, we don't say that our account went down 10%. We say that it went down $10,000. So just like this dynamic of the losses being, we need to outweigh those by kind of more than the equivalent of a good thing. It's a tough dynamic, particularly if you're starting to make good changes at this time of the year. It's genuinely hard to deal with. And then the final reason that I think that financial New Year's resolutions are hard is that for the most part they're very broad or they're very vague and just overall not specific enough, right? I want to save more money this year. Why? Right? Who cares? And I'm being sort of tongue-in-cheek with this, of course. But if you don't have a good reason that you want to save more money or pay down debt, how much do you want to pay down? Right? Why? Right? Why are you paying down debt versus doing something else with your money? And just overall, what's different now on January 2nd that makes it a priority when it wasn't on December 30th? Right? These goals tend to be broad, and we need to get really clear on the reasons why we're trying to do these things. And that ultimately is my starting point for what to do about this going forward. How do we make this different? If I'm saying that financial New Year's resolutions don't work particularly well because of the time of the year and coming off the holidays and because we just don't tend to set them well in the first place, what do we do differently? And I have kind of a couple different things to think through here. First and foremost, right, forget about January, right? Forgetting about waiting to the new year for, if you've already kind of fallen off the horse by the time February comes around, right? Don't worry about any of that. Set your next financial goal now, right? There's no need to rely on an arbitrary timeline that somebody else in society sets for us to want to improve something about the way you're living your life. And that certainly applies to finances, but it can apply to anything else, of course, as well. Set your next goal now, right? Start today, and be specific, right? You need to really understand what it is you want to do, and why it is you want to do it. Like I mentioned, that's another reason that a lot of these tend to fail, is that we don't spend time really honing in on what it is we want to look for. A good financial New Year's resolution has two parts. First and foremost, it has a dollar amount in it, and it has a date, an end date. Right? When do you want to do this thing by? Right? I want to save $20,000 this year to by the end of the year, so we can buy put a down payment on a home in January of next year. Right? I know we're behind on saving for retirement, so I want to increase my retirement account contributions 7% over the next year. Things like that, right? With a definite time frame and a dollar amount, and then get really clear on why it is that's something you want to do as well. And some of these things have obvious answers, right? It's good to pay down debt. It's good to save money. But why is that important to you, right? Why is that? That there's a reason that you're trying to set this goal now for yourself, as opposed to a month ago or 6 months ago or a year ago, right? What's changed in your life now that this needs to become a priority? And really think about it. I find I often, people, when I ask people these questions, they give me an answer, and I usually have to say something to the effect of, Okay, tell me more about that, right? Or why is that, right? You got to go deeper than you might even want to. And then when you think you're done, you might even ask yourself why one more time, just to see where it takes you. You'd be surprised at the very powerful motivators that can come out of doing that sort of exercise. And it's one of my favorite things to do with my clients. It really is powerful. So make sure you get clear on the why behind your financial goals, and the things you want to change in your life financially. And if you do that, these things tend to stick a lot better. But that's just the process of setting the New Year's or the kind of new resolution in the first place, right? What's the next step? And once you have a very clear, specific goal, and you know why it is that's something that's important to you, break it down a little bit further, right? If you want to buy a home a year from today, right? Figure out the steps that need to go into that, right? You need to figure out how much home you can afford in terms of your monthly budget. You need to figure out how big the home needs to be. You need to get a rough idea of where it is you're looking to buy. You should start looking at prices to see what the options are right now. You should review your credit reports to make sure that everything's good to go. There aren't any errors or things that need to be corrected before you go to take out a mortgage. Pick out a few mortgage lenders to talk to. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make when they buy a home is that they listen to a realtor who has one mortgage lender they work with, and so you get one quote for the biggest purchase you're ever going to make in your life, right? You price shop things at the supermarket, right? Or you price shop just things that we buy in our everyday life. You should be price shopping your mortgage as well. That's kind of an aside, but something that while we're talking about it, I thought I'd throw out there. But back to the things that we need to figure out when we're buying a home, right? How much do you want to put down? How much do you need to put down? Should you be making a 20% down payment? Should you be making more than that? Can you make less than that? Right? When are you looking to move in by? Right? There's all these different kind of components to this question that, again, you need to get really clear on before you start trying to hold yourself accountable to the goal. Right? By breaking it up step by step, it makes it much more likely to happen. And then finally, you have this laundry list of things you need to do. Focus on one step at a time, right? What's the first step you need to take to reach that goal? If you, in going through this exercise in terms of setting a goal about buying a house, you find that the biggest challenge is going to be saving up for the down payment. Great, right? Your first step is to set up an automated transfer from your checking to your savings account, or direct deposit from your paycheck into your savings account for the amount you need to save every paycheck or every month, so that by the time you actually reach the end point, your target, it's going to be there because you've set it up to succeed from day one, right? It's just an example, but you want to break these steps up, right? And what's the easiest thing you can do to now, right? The first step you can take to give you the best possible chance of actually reaching that goal further down the line. Like I said, I do believe in deadlines, right? In terms of the big goal, buying a house, you might be several months or even years out. But for these like small steps, short deadlines, right? A week, a month. I personally, in my personal life, and in the business, I tend to have one big goal I set for the business every month. It's a shorter period of time. It's much easier to stay focused, and things tend to get done more. And the number of times I've met or missed these goals is way better than how I used to do New Year's resolutions, because I give myself a short amount of time. I set very clear goals. I break it down into the steps that need to be done, and just focus on one step at a time. And finally, if you've tried some of these things before, you're struggling with them, the last thing I would say is find somebody to hold you accountable. We just the way our brains work, we respond very well to social peer pressure. It could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be someone like me, right? A lot of my clients do use me as somebody to just make sure they do the things they need to do. But just like I said, just like a personal trainer at a gym, right? The people who hire them tend to have much better results than the people who don't, and there's a reason for that. Part of it's the knowledge they bring to the table, but I think a very underrated component is just having a reason to show up, and somebody's expecting you to be there and expecting you to do certain tasks, right? It's a really strong pressure that you can use in your favor to make sure that you're taking the steps you want to ultimately reach the goals that you have. So I hope this is helpful in terms of thinking through a better way to approach New Year's resolutions, right? Don't worry about starting them in January. Make them shorter, make them more specific. And certainly you want to find some way to hold yourself accountable so you're not just relying on your personal self-motivation. Hope this is helpful. We do these videos every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much.